If you would please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you all for joining us this evening. Jody, could you call the roll, please?
Dennis,
Here.
Harold,
Here.
Hollenbaugh,
Here.
O'Dorisio,
Here.
Phipps,
Here.
Robinette,
Here.
Rabando.
Here.
All righty, the minutes from our September 18th meeting were distributed to you for your perusal. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Correspondence. Jody, do we have any correspondence this evening?
We do. The mayor is requesting confirmation of a reappointment and several appointments to the city's board and commissions. The reappointment is for the revolving loan committee, John Eckel, to serve through May 31st, 2026. And the appointments are as follows. For the Human Relations Commission, Dr. Roger Grant, Pastor Robin Small, and Lindsay Jo Durham to serve through May 31st, 2026. Historic Preservation Committee, Heidi Rieger to serve through May 31st, 2027. Parks and Rec Board, Lisa Lawson to serve through May 31st, 2028. Sidewalk Commission, Kevin Mercer to serve through May 31st, 2027. And Zoning Board of Appeals, Tim Emmerich to serve through May 31st, 2027. All requests are effective immediately.
Mr. President,
Mr. Harold.
I move that we approve each of these and thank those that are willing to serve.
Second.
Okay, properly moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And I too would like to extend my thanks to the citizens who are willing to serve on our boards and commissions. Any other correspondence?
No, that's it.
Brings us to lobby visitations. Do we have lobby visitations?
Yes. Trevor Jesse,
When your name is called, if you would come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and
Trevor Jesse at 150 Meeker Street. First and foremost, our community's investments in our schools positively impact first and foremost our students and our teachers. I want to share a few pieces that I found insightful. Residents of Bowling Green School District currently contribute less than any of our surrounding districts. Figures from the Wood County Auditor last year in January said that based on home values of $150K and folks that make about $60K in income, the typical BG resident is paying less than our surrounding districts. To the tune of $126 less than Elmwood, $216 less than Otsego, $318 less than Eastwood, $498 less than Fostoria, $570 less than Rossford, and $834 less than North Baltimore, and the largest is $1,125 less than Perrysburg. Perrysburg built a new high school in 2001. Elmwood built one in 2004. Otsego, it was 2007. North Baltimore, 2012. Rossford recently finished their construction in 2020. The time for repair and renovation is unfortunately over, and the need for a new high school building is growing more desperate every year. I want to thank Councilman Harold for drafting the resolution and for your support, and I'd like to encourage the rest of the council to vote in favor of the resolution, and of course, thank you for your time.
thank you very much.
Dick Edwards and Nadine.
Richard Edwards, 205 Willowwood Circle in Bowling Green. Mr. Mayor, Mr. President, and ponytail and all. Now, gee, I don't recognize you there. And members of council and all assembled. As you might guess, this is the first time that we've attended a city council meeting in your new chamber. and we couldn't be more pleased with the finished product. As one who, like so many of you, suffered through the miseries and shortcomings of the old building, this impressive new structure provides us all with a special sense of relief, comfort, and yes, history. Its many distinctive features are super impressive. Thank you all, and especially Municipal Administrator Treader and the staff, as well as the Mosier Construction and others for the finished product. Nadine and I welcome this opportunity to join with the voices of the BG Families for Schools. We applaud the leadership of the committee to support this all-important levy in urging a yes vote on November 7th. With the exception of a 10-plus year absence, 1984 to 1994, Nadine and I have been residents of Bowling Green since 1971, when we moved back to Ohio from Bethesda, Maryland, and the National Science Foundation. Our three daughters, Tamara, Tracy, and Kirsten, have benefited enormously from their years as Bobcats. Their memories of the BG schools are fresh and positive and with deep feelings of appreciation. In short, we as a family have had the benefit of the long view of the BG schools. Apart from the middle school, little has changed in a physical sense with our schools over those many years. Fortunately and happily, the quality of education has remained strong, a real testament to our outstanding teachers and administrators. Our students today and tomorrow, and their families, as well as our teachers, are long overdue for a new high school. Our facilities stand today in sharp contrast with our neighboring schools of Otsego, Eastwood, Elmwood, and indeed, Perrysburg. With love and appreciation for the past, we as a community can no longer afford to turn a blind eye to the obvious. A new high school is a must. We cannot remain mired in the past. The need for a new high school is well-reasoned, well-planned, and well-documented. As a community, in concert with our school district townships, let's move forward. Let's all support the school levy on November 7th, and I thank you very much for your time and the opportunity to speak to you in your new home. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Emeritus.
David Drain.
David Drain, 228 East Court Street. My family has a small LLC that rents property. Last week I did an inspection on one of our properties. This was a 3-bedroom, 1-story, single-unit dwelling. The inspection was not difficult. The checklist is easy to read, and the criteria it sets forth are very clear. The entire inspection, internal and external, took about 30 minutes. I believe this is a task that could be done by anyone who can read. I only inspected one dwelling unit, I will say. If I had 600 units, this would have taken much more time and perhaps some redundant effort. Perhaps the city should work with some of the larger rental companies to automate some aspects of the inspection process to make it easier for them. I did have some questions the city was able to answer over the phone. I'll tell you what these are so no one else has to ask the same questions. How do I unregister a property upon sale or conversion? Call planning, 354-6219, and they will deregister your property for you right then and there. What exactly is the occupant supposed to sign? Have them sign the original copy of the inspection paperwork you used. That's it. What would I do if the property inspected was not presently occupied with a tenant? Write no tenant on the inspection form. These are not difficult things to do. I used to work in factories, and as part of our change management practice, we trained all affected workers in the details of any process change. This would be a good practice for the city. When a change is made that affects how someone should act or work, offer well-designed training to make it easy to do the job right and difficult to do the job wrong. The recent zoning code training was a very good example of how to do this. Lastly, I do not see any reason to delay these inspections for an entire year as proposed. The inspections are not difficult, but the need to get them done is urgent. Every time I go out to campaign, I see obvious and sometimes even dangerous problems with properties that this inspection could rectify or prevent. Let's just get this done. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, and congratulations on your home's recognition as a historic home.
Thank you. Thank you. By the way, Rose wrote that article. I didn't.
Okay.
Kathy Mall.
Good evening, Kathy Mall, Executive Director of the Cocoon, Post Office Box 1165. More than 1 in 3 women and more than 1 in 4 men in the United States will experience rape, physical violence, and/or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime. 1 in 15 children are exposed to intimate partner violence each year, and 90% of these children are eyewitnesses to this violence. 1 in 5 female high school students report being physically and/or sexually abused by a dating partner. Last year, over 300 requests for civil protection orders were filed in our local domestic relations court. In 2022, the Cocoon supported over 600 survivors of domestic and sexual violence, with approximately a third of them residing right here in Bowling Green. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I want to thank the City of Bowling Green, along with City Council members, for allowing the Cocoon to place purple ribbons downtown to bring awareness to the suffering of so many in our community. The numbers shared earlier do not account for the many survivors suffering in silence, unaware of where to turn for help, or too afraid to speak up. These purple ribbons provide us with an opportunity to support survivors of domestic violence in our community and to remind us all that we can be a part of the solution to ending violence in our community. Thank you for your continued support, and we look forward to continuing to work together to create a safe community for us all.
Thank you very much.
That's everyone.
Okay. That brings us to reports. Nope, that brings us to the introduction of new legislation. I was trying to move things along.
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps,
from the Planning, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee, I have 3 ordinances. The first is an ordinance amending and adopting Section 121.04A1 and 121.04A2 of the codified ordinances of the City of Bowling Green regarding interior and exterior inspections required. The second is an ordinance amending and adopting Sections 35.70, 98.16, and 151.17C of the codified ordinances of the City of Bowling Green regarding city fees and fees charged for services, engineering stakes, replacement fee, staking after utility installation, and fees, and declaring an emergency. The third ordinance authorizes a change to previously adopted temporary reduction and/or moratorium of certain residential building permit fees, and ordinance number 9120, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette.
from the Finance Committee, I have 2 resolutions and 2 ordinances. First, a resolution authorizing the sale of obsolete or unfit municipally owned personal property which is not needed for public use by internet auction, and authorizing the municipal administrator to enter into a contract with GovDeals, Inc. for ongoing internet auctions for calendar year 2024. A resolution authorizing, the municipal administrator to enter into a renewal of the agreement with the Wood County Public Defender. An ordinance providing supplemental appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2023, and ending December 31st, 2023. And an ordinance amending appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2023, and ending December 31st, 2023.
Mr. President,
Mr. Dennis.
I have an ordinance amending Chapter 35, Finances of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio, to enact and adopt a new section refining the process for determination of the lowest and best bid on public improvement projects, subject to Ohio Revised Code Section 4115.
Mr. President, I have an ordinance from the Community Improvement Committee, ordinance amending and adopting Section 39.01 and 39.02 of the codified ordinances of the City of Bowling Green concerning unlawful discrimination.
Okay, is that everything? All right. That brings us to official reports. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Council. As you recall, at our last meeting, there were some questions about the status of the rental registration program and also some questions about the self-inspection program. And at that time, I indicated to you that we would provide an update to you at tonight's meeting. So now I would like to ask our City Attorney Hunter Brown and our Planning Director Heather Saylor to provide an update on both of those programs at your request. So I'm going to turn it over now to Hunter and Heather.
Good evening. Gotcha. Thank you. I promised the mayor I'll be as brief as possible. Although this program is nothing but brief, there was a lot of planning and details that have went into the planning of this first phase, which of course is registration. So this was passed, as you recall, in May of 2021 and effective obviously 30 days later. So we spent that time starting with the process, sketching that out with some staff that within our office and also our GIS staff. So we do have, it stands for Geographic Information Systems, if you're not aware of GIS, so it holds a lot of data and mapping systems, and it's a very robust thing the city uses. And so in talking with GIS staff, they knew we could handle registration within this program. So we met, drafted that program, really translated the ordinance into what information do we need and what is most important. So we worked on that for several months. We did send our first mailing to what we thought were rental property owners towards the end of August of 2021. How do we know what a rental is? Okay, this is the difficult part because we basically started with zero information. So what we did first is we looked at our utility account data and we got a sense of what are rentals through that. But in that first mailing of over 800 letters, we actually found out a lot of that data wasn't exactly accurate. So it could be the address wasn't updated, for example. So we resent several notifications too. So again, the parameters of that was really notification, education, using what tools we had within our office. We also created a paper form because I know it was really important that we really tried to do things in a way that really hit different types of users. So whether, someone maybe a little older wasn't comfortable with the portal that we designed, or, maybe they only had one property. So we designed a system where the less properties you had, we encourage you to go on the online portal and just fill it out. Our staff help people fill it out. We did it over the phone. We did it in person. So we really tried to, again, customize that because, again, our goal was compliance. And, again, it was free. So we really thought we could make it as easy as possible. So we really, as a strategy, started with the large property owners, a phone call, an email. Most already knew about this coming, so we were able to just reach out and say, here's the information we need. We worked with our GIS team to get a spreadsheet made so they could fill out the spreadsheet, make it as efficient as possible. And then once it was finalized, after scrubbing a lot of data, a lot of back and forth data, then we could inject that into our GIS system. And then we work with apartment complexes next because, again, obviously we're trying to hit the larger properties first to get the most we could registered first. And then, again, numerous mailings, even phone calls to utility account holders that maybe were tenants and we weren't getting the best address possible for their owner. So we continue with that. We had web changes. Again, we had auditor data we used. And then we also had real estate transfers. So again, it's a moving target. This changes constantly where the use changes or the properties change hands. So we still are working on that as we speak, and that will never really end, right? So GIS also evolved over time when we had feedback from some of the registrations, we're like, that's a great idea. Let's have a auto email go to you once you submit, and then we approve it. And once a submittal happened on the online portal, we actually had our code enforcement officer review every single registration. So we had a set of eyes go through every single one to make sure the zoning was right. And again, if they are an agent that wasn't local or an owner that wasn't local, we had to have a local agent. So again, it took a lot of time to go through each of these processes. Another thing that's very complex about the GIS is that it has to be tied to an address point. So in our office, we are in charge of addressing for the entire city, and it's tied into Wood County E91 system. So we have to make sure that an address point was added to our address portal for every single property. Well, that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you have a complex that is 200 units, I am the authority of that, so I had to sit down and add 200 address points to every single multifamily apartment complex. No one could enter their registration until that point was added. That was very complicated, took a lot of time, and again, I'm just setting the stage for why registration took so long for us, because it was such a robust program to start from nothing, get all that information, and then work back and forth with every single owner. We also had a lot of phone calls during the process, obviously, and emails trying to educate people, what is this? Is this private? Is this not private? I don't want my information to everybody. Just a lot of questions of why even is the city doing this. I thought we did a great job, though. We got to the point where we felt like we really had a good process in working with our team, and then a good process trying to find rentals. Although not perfect, again, we thought it really was helpful. So as far as the outcomes, we have corrected a lot of addresses. Again, it sounds simple, but just walk downtown and just guess what's going on inside of a building. How many apartments are in a building? We didn't know that, so we really had to make a lot of determinations, again, starting with the larger owners, larger complexes, and then again, fixing addresses too. So someone may say they had, 120 and 120 and a half. Well, maybe we had something different. So again, meshing correct addresses are really, really great outcome that we had. And it's really robust data that our utilities can use also. And again, our GIS is really thrilled because that's what they do, right? They work with address points and collecting all that data. So that's a great outcome. And like I told you, it's tied to our E911 system. So having good addresses that give the information is someone that can be routed very quickly for our responders to get to an address. Again, very important. So we feel like these have been great outcomes for registration. We've also worked with this data that helps us with our nuisance property database. Are they a rental or not? That kind of helps us figure out into the future what patterns we may or may not be having. We also did this, again, with a pretty small staff and starting from nothing. So I'm really proud of all the work that we've done so far. And again, it's been a learning experience. So where are we at so far? We actually have 6,460 rental units registered. So again, every single unit had to be separately registered and reviewed by our staff. So we think that's great information. Now, what's the question next? Well, how many more do we have to register? We don't know, right? You only know what you know. So again, when we discover something that we think has evidence it's a potential rental, we reach out, we do a letter, and again, continue that process. But we do think that we have a pretty good handle on them. Again, it's probably not perfect, but you have to remember too, there were exceptions built into the ordinance. So we're not going after exceptions. Does that make sense? So if you're owned by a charitable organization, religious organization, BGSU, those are not counted in that number. So obviously this number is higher. So I wanted to point that out. So I think that's about it as far as registration, unless you have anything to add, Hunter?
Well, it brings us to the issue of, is that working? This brings us to the issue of what to do with the people who don't register. And to be clear, I am talking about the people who are not registered, I'm not talking about the people who aren't finished certifying the inspections. But with regards to the people who aren't registered, and the first step we had to do was determine how we know it's a rental. And as Heather said, we don't know what we don't know. So we have to take the list of people that we suspect are rentals, determine how we have that information, how much we know about that property, and if we know enough to proceed. After the time that's passed since this was enacted, we have developed a process for proceeding against those properties, and I'm happy to say that as of this conversation, there are no properties on the list that we need to proceed against. All of them are either registered or we don't have enough information to proceed against them as rentals.
Okay, thank you. So this brings us to the phase 2, we'll call it, the self-certification process. That has turned into something that really was, as I've already explained, it was very time consuming to get registration. So to move to the next phase was even more complicated because we had to design checklists per the ordinance. We had to get a cross-section of our staff together because we needed to design a handout. We had to design the occupant information handout also. So we had a team that really was diverse in what they did in the city, and then brought them together regularly starting about the end of 2022 to start planning for that next phase with that deadline baked in the ordinance. You know, I was personally very nervous. I stayed a lot of late nights trying to do what we could do to get things going. But we also had to rely on our other team members in GIS that also have, you know, a big plate full of lots to do. So unfortunately, it didn't work as quickly as we wanted it to get the GIS portal set up, but we were able to, I thought, make huge progress in a short time. We just also recognized that we had to move into the city building. You know, around the same time that we thought maybe we're ready to go, we were moving into this building. So we had a lot of other things going on. And we talked about, you know, what's the best timing for this. I know Lori had talked to Hunter about concerns that we weren't going to make this deadline and what we could do. Again, to still give landlords the same amount of time that they would have from that June 1st to October 1st deadline as they would when we were ready to deploy and give them to the end of the year. So we had talked to Hunter about that, and he can add more details to that. But we determined that the checklist, you know, that's the tough part, right? So I've talked to a lot of other communities that have a similar type of inspection program, and they said, you know, the first thing you need to do is make sure they're enforceable so that they're based on law. And so in talking to our internal staff, they said, well, you know, the Wood County Health, Safety, and Sanitation regulations for structures and vacant lots seems a perfect document to use because that's under the authority of Wood County, and of course we've adopted that. So we worked very closely with our fire chief. He came up with additional items that he thought were really important, especially for complexes that he would go to inspect with one of his firefighters. And so he added a couple things from the fire and the building code that, again, it might not be applicable to everybody, but we thought it was a really robust list that we also wanted to be educational too. So that's why it might seem a little onerous, but it was important that we got the information out there to property owners that may not have known some of that information. We also thought, gosh, this really looks onerous, especially if you have 1,000 units. We understand. We talked about that internally. And of course, you've all probably had feedback by now that it is a lot. It's a big project, but we also know it's really important. So again, we're open to changing things. It really was a good faith effort on our part with a lot of staff to review it and come up with a really, I think, robust online portal. You know, each landlord gets their own account, their password, they create that. Also, before we deployed it, we also had some testers. We didn't want to deploy it until we had some coworkers test it. We had some external landlords to test it and give us that initial feedback, and we did adapt the online portal to some of that feedback. So again, I think we were trying to think of every detail that we could to really adapt everybody, depending on their background, into this new program. We also created a public kiosk in our office. So again, if somebody calls and says, you know, I need help, I don't have a computer, I'm not used to this, which we did have quite a bit of people with registration, we help them. So as of now, we actually have over 400 self-inspection, I guess you'd say addresses, 400 addresses submitted. I thought that was really great results so far since this went out on September 11th. And again, I didn't know what to anticipate, quite honestly, but I thought that was really a good response so far of people that have submitted. What else am I missing here? I think that's basically it, unless you have any specific questions for me, or Hunter, you want to add anything?
Yes, I was going to speak a little bit to the timing issue. Councilman Robinette has asked for legislation to change the deadlines a bit, and we are very supportive of that. You know, every step of this process is one that has given us problems that we have to figure out. This is the first time we've done this, and the administration, I think, is doing a great job figuring out those problems, but they are things that need to be handled. One of the issues that we do have, as Heather has said, is with the checklist a bit. You know, my reading of the checklist, I don't think it's particularly difficult, but we have also had some negative feedback. So we are reviewing this checklist, and there will probably be some edits to it to come soon. We want to both maintain the integrity of the checklist as well as make it not difficult for those using it. And I think the difficulty from the feedback I've been hearing isn't necessarily that it's too burdensome to go through all this stuff, but some of the terms are maybe a little ambiguous or confusing. So I think that's the part where we're going to try and simplify things a bit. I would also just note that, in doing this, we are and have been comparing how other municipalities, especially within the state of Ohio, handle their landlord registrations. And I would note that in doing the checklist and developing their rental list, these are things they develop over a period of many, many years, especially places like Athens and Oxford, who both have similar programs. In fact, the only way that some of these places even find out about a rental list is by tenants complaining over a term of 10, 15 years. So the fact that we have so many registered already, I think, is a pretty great accomplishment.
Mr. President, may I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Have we already pushed back the deadline?
We made a decision. I was asked if administratively we could push back the deadline a bit. My interpretation of the law was that we could. Any deadline that's given under the law, the burden is ultimately put on the administration to interpret that deadline and enforce it. I think minor pushbacks to those are acceptable, and that was the interpretation that I made. So yes, it has been pushed back a bit, and I think Councilman Robinette's legislation is respective of that.
Mr. President?
Yep, go ahead.
When you say the deadline, do you mean the deadline for registration?
I think, which one?
No, the self-inspection.
Deadline
Just
for
the self-inspection, I think, is
Deadline
what
for
we're talking.
inspection seems pretty, I mean, that's what we're amending tonight, right? I mean, it's October 1st, 2023. How is that
But it's
open
not
to
now,
interpretation?
right?
I'm sorry, I'm getting two questions.
The deadline's not October 1st, 2023 now, correct?
Correct.
When is it now?
End of the year.
Like
The end of the year,
Yes,
December 31st.
yeah, the end of the year.
December 31st.
31st.
And that was because we rolled it out a little bit slower, so we're trying to bend over backwards to help everyone out to ensure that they have time with that deadline of December 31st, correct?
Yes, I think we have to keep in mind what our goals are here. Our goal is for compliance and for everyone to complete these. So that's what we are trying to accomplish.
Totally, 100%. Thank you so much.
Jeff, were you done, or?
No. So you mentioned that we now think we've got everybody registered, everybody that we thought we might have to go after is now in full compliance, I think you said, right?
Well, the ones we know of, yes.
Okay. Have we issued any fines related to this?
We have not.
Okay, so we are when was the last rental property that was on that list compliant?
We were ready to proceed against the ones that we were ready to proceed against last week.
And how long was that list? What does that list look like? I mean, are we talking 2 properties? Are we talking 200?
There were about a dozen, I believe. That
Actually, we did it down to 5 or 6 because we had people call us and say, it's not a rental, my daughter lives there. So a lot of them, every case is so individualized that all we want people to do is call us. That's really what we want to do. Just let us know if it's not a rental, at least so we know and we can note that.
Sure. So 38 weeks into the year would be $9,500 on each of these units. Is that correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
$1 a week, I believe, was the penalty for failing to register your property. We are 39 weeks now into the year.
Yes and no. If I could elaborate a bit.
Please.
The section in our code for the landlord registration that discusses the penalties, I believe, is unenforceable under Ohio law. I believe if you want to proceed against people who aren't registering, you need to sue them. And that's what I was getting prepared to do last week when we completed the list.
You mentioned, if I may continue, you mentioned that the checklist that we've got is a mashup of fire, building, health codes. So would it be fair to say that everything on these lists are already requirements that every property owner needs to adhere to?
Yes.
Okay, so everything on the checklist, I mean, the checklist then is not terribly onerous. It is all already required somewhere. We're really just compiling this information and putting it in a nice checklist and distributing it through our website.
Our intent was to do something that had law behind it. I can't speak for how, if we got a complaint and it was for the Wood County Health Department regulations, we would forward it to them. So I can't speak for how they would enforce it. But again, we wanted law behind the checklist.
Okay.
Are there
Mr. President?
any additional questions?
Yeah, I do. I'd like to ask Heather a couple of questions. You said 9/11 was when the checklist went out. How did they go? How were they distributed to landlords?
Well, let me back up a minute. The checklists were actually on the website earlier than that. We just weren't ready to deploy the online portal yet. So we kept saying, okay, coming soon, basically, but we had the whole logistics of the ordinance on the webpage. But on 9/11, we actually sent out letters to, okay, I'm backing up here. So we did this in phases. So the first phase, we sent out about 300 letters and emails because we were afraid we didn't want to basically overburden the technology. We wanted to test it out first. So the Friday before September 11th, what would be that, the 8th? Yeah. We sent out all the letters, anticipating people would probably get them on Monday, and then we sent those emails out on Monday also. And then by Thursday, we found out we really weren't having issues with the system, and we sent out the rest of the letters and emails. So everything went out by that Thursday, whatever date that is, the 14th, 15th?
And you said they were already posted online by then?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. Dennis?
when were they posted online? How long has this been available on the city's website?
I'm going to say probably at least a month and a half to 2 months.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure when we posted them because we've had so many moving parts with the program and other things in our office going on.
So maybe July, mid-July?
Likely, I think a little sooner.
Okay. I do have one other question. We have moved the date back to December 31st. The legislation, the law that we've got here on the books says October 1st. We've moved it back to December 31st. According to 121.05, in order to be eligible for self-certification, you need to be fully compliant with this law. So, I guess I would argue that by October 1st, the 6,063 properties that have not registered would be required to get a third-party inspection. That date is now apparently December 31st. Would it be the case then that as of December 31st, anybody who is not registered, who has not submitted their self-inspection form, will then finally be required to get a third-party inspection?
Well, that's this. Sorry. That's a decision that I think we'll have to make at that time on how to proceed. The angle I was looking at up until now was, what do we do against the people who haven't registered? In that, we're still kind of modifying and trying to adjust the rental the inspection form. I think that's a decision we'll be making when we have that form finalized.
Okay. So when we have the form finalized, the form's going to be amended. Edits are coming soon. I hear this. When is this going to get off the ground, I guess? And I'm sympathetic to the amount of work that went in, particularly on the back end, after the properties get registered. It seems we still don't have a date certain yet, particularly if we can unilaterally move the date.
Excuse me, as we sit here today, the program is active. As Heather indicated, it's been, the portal, online portal was opened some time ago. There have been over 400 addresses have been registered. People can continue to register as we continue to modify the forms. If the date is extended, any forms that have been completed to date will be honored. Like if this, as suggested by council, if this deadline gets extended into next year, those that have registered now, those registration or inspection forms would be honored yet next year. So it's an ongoing process. People are registering and they can continue to register right now. as we consider modifications to the checklist.
Mr. President?
Mr. Harrow.
Mike, when you say registered, you mean the self-inspection?
I didn't use the right term, inspections, correct.
Thanks, I thought that's what you meant.
Yeah, I apologize.
Any other questions at this time? Okay, thank you both very much for explaining. Mr. Mayor, do you have any other comments?
I do not.
Are there
Happy to
any-
answer any questions you have.
Any questions for the mayor?
Just to, if I could, though, just to close the book on the presentation, I want to also thank those employees that have been responsible for standing these programs up. It's clear, based on kind of the abbreviated update that Heather gave, that there has been a tremendous amount of work that has gone into this, and I'm thankful. I'm proud of the work that they've done. There certainly is work to do. You know, as I mentioned, the inspection forms are a work in progress. We are open to modifications, but I want to stress what Hunter mentioned is that, you know, even though we are open to modifying those forms to figure out a way that they can be productive for those that own multiple, sometimes hundreds or thousands of properties, we want to be mindful of, you know, the time element involved in that. But it's, again, stressing that when Hunter says we want to maintain the integrity of the program, that's very important to all of us. So it's a work in progress. I'm thankful for those residents that have complied, both with the registration. That should be seen as a success. I feel like when we really analyze the number of rental properties that we think there are in town and compare that to the number that have registered, I think that that's been a successful effort. We have registered, I think, the vast majority of properties, you know, in Bowling Green, and that is serving as the database, the foundation for everything that's now happening with self-inspections. It's a work in progress, and we want to, you know, continue to monitor the effectiveness of the program, and we'll continue to be open for modifications that are going to be beneficial to both property owners and the city and its residents. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, City Attorney, Mr. Brown.
I have no report, except unless you have questions in particular about the program we just spoke about.
Are there any questions for Mr. Brown?
Mr. President, I don't have a question, but welcome back, Hunter. I'm
Thank you.
very glad for the reason that you weren't here and that you're back, and I hope everyone's healthy.
Thank you, they are.
I just have one question related to when you were talking about the registration. And you said that as of now, everything that we know about is registered. But you also said that there's a dispute in whether we can verify certain things. So like, let's say I had a rental property, but my mother's living in it and I'm not charging her rent, or my daughter's living in it and I'm not charging her rent. Or it's owned by the Methodist Church or something. Those would be addresses we would suspect as being rental properties, but since they fall.
I wouldn't so much talk about those. It would be addresses that we had a reason to think were rentals or were rentals in the past. For example, in our utility information, perhaps there was a note that said rental, right? So we've got all these addresses and we sent out notices saying, hey, we have reason to believe that your address is a rental. We have this new law, you have to register. And we didn't hear from the person, mostly because they live far away. They have no idea what's going on in Bowling Green, Ohio, something like that. Then later we find out, oh yes, their mother's living there or their daughter's living there and they're not charging them rent and it doesn't qualify as a rental property.
Okay.
Those would be the ones I would be talking about.
Okay. So as far as we know, with the information we have, everything that needs to be registered is registered.
Correct. And again, we don't know what we don't know. And on the plus side, we do have the procedure in place to proceed against those that we think are thumbing their noses at us, which is fortunately none as of this conversation.
Okay. All right.
I need to add something in all fairness. Don't kick me under the table. So like I said, there's transfers every single week. So, I just pulled them the past 2 weeks. I think we had 12 properties on there we had to mail letters to. So this is never going to be done. I mean, I personally dislike that an ordinance has an initial registration date because it's so difficult to catch a moving target. And this is weekly. Stuff is changing and we get a phone call, hey, I need to unregister my property, as Mr. Drain stated earlier. It's exactly one of many things we're hearing. So every day, the phone's still off the hook, the emails are still there, and it's just never a done program. So I just wanted to clarify that there could be 12 right now we don't have registered yet, but again, it literally just closed on the property 1 or 2 weeks ago.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. Brown?
Mr. President?
Mr. Dennis.
One more for now. Is the database going to be published online?
We haven't talked about that yet. I guess we did it in kind of a roundabout way. Our concern was that until we really got the program off the ground and saw how it operated and how much compliance we had, we wanted to focus on compliance first with getting the properties into our online portal. That would be something really I would call a low priority at this point until we get a handle on the program.
Sure. I guess my reason for asking is that particularly here, some of the most active enforcement that we've seen has been on the part of various citizens groups that would probably be better equipped to verify whether properties in their neighborhood are in fact rental properties that are or not registered, being inspected, et cetera.
I could say a lot to that, but I won't go that deep. I will say I've heard a lot of people think something's a rental, and then when we talk to the owner, it's not at all. And so I want to caution you with that. We've heard, again, several stories about individual properties that's not necessarily the case. So I think you have to be careful making assumptions by how a property looks or what you think if you've never talked to these people. But what I would say is that we have a very robust, we actually been meeting monthly on nuisance properties, and we've made amazing headway with using a SharePoint database. Again, a lot of it's technology. We actually have this new nuisance database attached to the rental registration now. So it's going to give us a lot more information. And I feel like we've made huge gains over the years. I mean, between the health department, the health department meets with us monthly, Hunter, the prosecutor, my office, civil enforcement, we all meet together. And even the mayor will attend too. So we have been doing, I think, a really great job with nuisance properties and really trying to be proactive. So we're getting there. We always know we can improve, right? And that's what we're trying to do.
I would absolutely agree with that and echo what the mayor said. Looking at the monthly health department reports that we get, for example, the number that have been reported by staff is much higher in recent months, I have noticed. So clearly an emphasis is being placed on it. So certainly appreciate that.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Brown? Okay, thank you very much. Public Infrastructure Director, Mr. O'Connell.
Thank you. Just some updates on some projects, construction projects around town. So West Wooster and Haskins Road, I think I mentioned last time, was going to be paved, and it has been paved. That's pretty much wrapping itself up. Out in the Woodbridge Business Park, the new road from Wooster Street into the park, Woodgate Drive, is being paved this week as well. So hopefully we'll have another entrance and exit out of the business park. There's still some utility work yet to be done, pulling some conduit and some other things out there, but the road should be getting close to being finished here soon. The East Wooster Street roundabout project, there were some trees planted out there for some landscaping improvements, and we're waiting for the light poles to be delivered and installed for that project to get wrapped up. The next job that will be coming out for bid is the Village Waterline project. We did get, finally got approval from the EPA on the plans and the specifications and the contract documents. So that's going to be out for bid, opening bids here in the next couple weeks. This is Public Power Week, and so Amanda helped us put out some press information about what public power means to the community, and and making sure that they're aware that decisions are made locally with our Board of Utilities and with City Council And having local input into that is important, and that's what makes Public Power unique from the investor and utilities. And then finally, about mid-September, we did roll out a new outage call center process for customers to call for any electric, water, or sewer outages that they may experience 24 hours a day. It's the same phone number for all three issues, no matter whether it's, say, electric, water, or sewer. Customers call this number. They get a live body to take the information from them, identify the address, what the issue is, and then the company is CRC is the name of the company, and so CRC will then dispatch our line crews or our water and sewer crews to go out and take care of the problem. Previously, those calls would go to our police dispatch after hours, or they would come to our staff offices during the day. And if you had large outages or major phone call situations, it would really inundate those offices with phone calls, and nothing else would happen. And that's not what the police is really there to do, to take electric outage calls in the evenings or weekends. Nor is that the responsibility of the business office when they're trying to deal with customers and get billing out the door. So CRC they mostly work with public power communities across the country. They've got 4 call centers in the United States. Most of our calls are routed, I believe, to Minneapolis or Minnesota area. If that office is out of power for some reason, or if they are having an issue, calls will go to some other call center in the States. So we've had some calls already to test it, and we've been working out some bugs with the system, but overall we're getting better information. The duty man that responds to the calls, if it's multiple calls, he's not getting inundated with those calls because CRC is collecting those up and sending text messages versus sending a phone call like they might have gotten before with police dispatch. So it's more efficient for the duty man to go out and direct the repairs versus taking phone calls and then trying to notify the superintendents or myself or Jim about what's happening or what's going on. So overall, we're finding it really to be a pretty successful, seems to be a pretty good process we're experiencing. And we got some improvements to make with it, but again, minor tweaks here and there. So that's all I have, unless you have questions for me from that or other things.
Are there any questions for Brian? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council committee reports. Do we have any council committee report?
Mr. President.
Mr. Robinette.
Again, just a reminder, the Finance Committee will meet at 6:15 on October 16th to receive the third quarter update.
Okay, anything else? All right, hearing nothing. Jody, could you lead us in the reading of legislation?
Legislation for first reading. Resolution number 3857 for first reading. Resolution authorizing the sale of obsolete or unfit municipally owned personal property which is not needed for public use by internet auction, and authorizing the municipal administrator to enter into a contract with GovDeals, Inc. for ongoing internet auctions for the calendar year 2024. Resolution number 3858 for first reading. Resolution authorizing the municipal administrator to enter into a renewal of the agreement with the Wood County Public Defender. Ordinance number 9129 for first reading. Ordinance providing supplemental appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2023 and ending December 31, 2023.
Mr. President.
Mr. Robinette.
I move to suspend the rules and give ordinance 9129 its second and third readings.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Jody?
Ordinance number 9129.
You have to vote.
Oh, I'm
got it.
sorry. Hurrying things along.
It's all right.
Harold.
Yes.
Hollenbaugh.
Yes.
Odoricio.
Yes.
Phipps.
Yes.
Robinette.
Yes.
Urbando.
Yes.
Dennis.
Yes.
Okay, so the rules are suspended for ordinance 9129.
Ordinance number 9129 for second and third readings. Ordinance providing supplemental appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2023, and ending December 31, 2023.
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette,
I move to adopt ordinance 9129.
Second.
it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Jody?
Hollenbaugh,
Yes.
Odericio,
Yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Urbando,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 9129 is adopted.
Ordinance number 9130 for first reading. Ordinance amending appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2023, and ending December 31, 2023.
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette,
I move to suspend the rules and give ordinance 9130 its second and third readings.
Second.
it's been properly moved and seconded. Jody?
Odericio,
Yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Urbando,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbaugh.
Yes. So the rules are suspended for ordinance 9130.
Ordinance number 9130 for second and third readings. Ordinance amending appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January 1 and ending January 1, 2023, and ending December 31st, 2023.
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette,
I move to adopt ordinance 9130.
Second.
it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Jody?
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Urbando,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbaugh,
Yes.
Odericio.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 9130 is adopted.
Ordinance number 9131 for first reading. Ordinance amending Chapter 35 Finances of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio to enact and adopt a new section refining the process for determination of the lowest and best bid on public improvement projects subject to Ohio Revised Code, ORC, Section 4115. Ordinance number 9132 for first reading. Ordinance amending and adopting section 121.04A1 and 121.04A2 of the codified ordinances of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio regarding interior and exterior inspections required. Ordinance number 9133 for first reading. Ordinance amending and adopting section 35.70, 98.16, and 151.17C of the codified ordinances of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio regarding city fees and fees charged for services, engineering stakes, replacement fee, staking after utility installation and fees, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps,
I move to suspend the rules and give ordinance 9133 its second and third reading.
Second.
properly moved and seconded. Jody?
Robinette,
Yes.
Urbando,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbaugh,
Yes.
Odericio,
Yes.
Phipps.
Yes.
Okay, the rules are suspended for ordinance 9133.
Ordinance number 9133 for second and third readings. Ordinance amending and adopting section 35.70, 98.16, and 151.17C of the codified ordinances of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio regarding city fees and fees charged for services, engineering stakes, replacement fee, staking after utility installation and fees, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps,
I move to adopt the emergency clause for ordinance 9133.
Second.
properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Jody?
Rabando,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbaugh,
Yes.
Odericio,
Yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette.
Yes.
Okay, the emergency clause has been adopted for ordinance 9133.
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps,
I move to adopt ordinance 9133.
Second.
properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Jody?
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbaugh,
Yes.
Odericio,
Yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Rabando.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 9133 is adopted.
Ordinance number 9134 for first reading, ordinance authorizing a change to previously adopted temporary reduction and/or moratorium of certain residential building permit fees in ordinance number 9120 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps,
I move to suspend the rules and give ordinance 9134 its second and third reading.
Second.
properly moved and seconded. Jody?
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbaugh,
Yes.
Odericio,
Yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Rabando,
Yes.
Dennis.
Yes.
Okay, the rules are suspended for ordinance 9134.
Ordinance number 9134 for second and third readings. Ordinance authorizing a change to previously adopted temporary reduction and/or moratorium of certain residential permit fees in ordinance number 9120 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps,
I move to adopt the emergency clause for ordinance 9134.
Second.
it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps?
I guess I'll just add that the reason for the accelerated readings and the emergency clause on ordinances 9133 and 9134 this evening are to allow for all these fee changes, including those contained in ordinance 9120, which passed last meeting on September 18th, to be on the same timeline.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none. Jody?
Hollenbaugh,
Yes.
Odericio,
Yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Rabando,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold.
Yes.
All right, the emergency clause is adopted for ordinance 9134.
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps?
I move to adopt ordinance 9134.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Jody?
Odericio,
Yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Rabando,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbaugh.
Yes. Ordinance 9134 is adopted.
Ordinance number 9135 for first reading, ordinance amending and adopting section 39.01 and 39.02 of the codified ordinances of the City of Bowling Green concerning unlawful discrimination. Legislation for second reading. Resolution number 3855 for second reading. Resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. Resolution number 3856 for second reading. Resolution adopting and authorizing an amended Community Development Block Grant CDBG Housing Policy and Procedures Manual. Ordinance number 9126 for second reading. Ordinance authorizing the municipal administrator to sign an LPA agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, and to seek qualifications, advertise for bids, and enter into contracts for design, engineering, right-of-way acquisition, construction, and other services related to the construction of a pedestrian hybrid beacon at the intersection of West Wooster Street and Maple Street. Ordinance number 9127 for second reading. Ordinance accepting annexation of approximately 1.52 acres of land in Center Township, Wood County, Ohio, from Vicky L. Frobos petitioner. Ordinance number 9128 for second reading. Ordinance establishing interim zoning of IE, innovation and employment zoning for the approximately 1.52 acres of land located on South Dunbridge Road and recently annexed to the city as petitioned for by Vicky L. Frobos, petitioner. Legislation for third reading. Resolution number 3853 for third reading. Resolution authorizing the City of Bowling Green to participate in the Federal Land and Water Conservation Fund Program and to file an application and accept grant funding upon grant application approval.
Mr. President,
Mr. Rabando.
I move to adopt Resolution 3853.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Jody?
Phipps?
Yes.
Robinette?
Yes.
Rabando?
Yes.
Dennis?
Yes.
Harold?
Yes.
Hollenbaugh?
Yes.
Odericio?
Yes.
All right, Resolution 3853 is adopted.
Resolution number 3854 for third reading. Resolution in support of the Bowling Green school system and specifically the public high school bond issue on November 7th ballot.
Mr. President,
Mr. Harold.
I move that we adopt Resolution 3854.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yes. Mr. President.
Mr. Robinette.
As a citizen and a taxpayer and the father of 4 proud Bowling Green High School graduates, I want to express my firm and unqualified support for the bond issue that will appear on the November ballot. I believe that the proposed improvements to the high school are important, and I'd like to take a moment to explain why I support this initiative. I believe this is the right project at the right time to replace a building that's out of date, needs tens of millions of dollars in repairs, and requires significant costs annually to maintain its deteriorating infrastructure. A safe, up-to-date, technology-capable school is not only necessary for a good learning environment for our students, but as a place of work for our teachers. The condition of the building is important to both recruiting and retaining good teachers. More importantly to me is the fact that a deteriorating school building has and will continue to have a negative effect on economic development. Another reason I support this plan is the large amount of grassroots support it has generated. True community support. This kind of support was largely lacking in previous efforts to update the high school. Citizens have taken the time to understand and support the project. I'm particularly pleased and encouraged to see the great work that the BG Families for Schools group has done, not just to advocate, but to educate all on the details of the bond issue, financing, building design, maintenance plans for the future. And I know that council members Phipps and Dennis are active members of this group, and I applaud them for their advocacy of this important project. To repeat myself, I support, my support for this Bowling Green City Schools bond issue is firm and unqualified, and I will vote for it. However, for reasons related only to the propriety of City Council telling others how to vote, I would have preferred a minor amendment to Resolution 3854, Section 4, as I shared with each member a few days ago. However, in the interest of presenting a unified position on this very important show of support for Bowling Green City Schools, I will vote yes without submitting my amendment. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. Harold.
I want to thank you, Greg, for your position on that and the importance you attach to a united front. I do appreciate that. And as far as my feelings on the resolution, are expressed in the resolution, but to give a summary, the city of Bowling Green is very fortunate to have a variety of very fine educational institutions. We have the public schools, we have St. Aloysius Elementary and Junior High, we have Bowling Green Christian Academy, the Montessori School, Sleek Academy, homeschooling. We have a great variety. And the school system, the general school system, I believe is only healthy if the public school system is healthy. And I think that we are in the position now where to increase the health of the public school system, we must address the high school. And that's why I've put this together to encourage, strongly encourage each voter to vote for this bond issue so that we can enhance the health of our education system. And there is no us, them. We're all in this together. We're one community. And that's what we would be doing, is increasing the health of this one community. And I can't think of a stronger way to say it than what's in the resolution.
Any other comments? I will just say this then. When it's time to maintain, we maintain. When it's time to remodel or expand, we'll do that. And when it's time to build, it's time to build. And I think it's time to build. So that's all I have to say about that, as Forrest would say. So with that, it's been properly moved and seconded. Jody?
Robinette,
Yes.
Mando,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbaugh,
Yes.
Odericio,
Yes.
Phipps.
Yes.
All right, Resolution 3854 is adopted
As amended.
as amended by substitution.
Very good.
Okay. Is there any other business to come before council this evening? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.